The gentleman from California, Mr. DeSaulnier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, it's delightful to see you. I'm not going to ask questions or make comments about basketball games. You'll be happy to know. But I'd be happy to watch the next game with you. Great series.
Game 6 is at the Boston Garden, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome to come out the Bay Area if there's Game 7. I have a couple of questions about different subject matters, and I know that graduates of Boston College can handle different subject matters, Mr. Chairman. First, your comments and your introductory comments about the International Labor Affairs Bureau. We have a bill that would authorize, for the first time, American full engagement in that. In a global economy, as you said in your comments, we need to be engaged in that to protect all workers. So any comments you have about that? And a subject, you came out to my district, an area that has 5 refineries in it, good paying jobs, best performing refineries in terms of industrial safety and environmental consequences, also the headquarters of Chevron in our area. Those jobs we want to transition. You saw our apprenticeship programs. You went to one of our pre-apprenticeship programs. We actually think there are more jobs, good paying jobs in the transition. Big impact. My colleague from Oregon has talked about this. So how can we work with you, the Department of Commerce, EPA, to make sure that we identify this transition? Because there are generations of jobs between NOAA. NOAA has a whole list of jobs for sea level rise, for wildfires, for hurricanes. This is just good policy, but we have to coordinate our assets and make sure that the workforce knows that there are good paying jobs and there are jobs that don't need career changes, just continuing investments in education. So those two things, and then I wanted to follow up on a couple around mental health that we've talked about.
All right, thank you, sir. And real quickly, on the transition into good-paying jobs, thank you, into the climate jobs. I want to thank you for having me in your district very early on in my tenure as Secretary of Labor. I learned a great deal. We sat with the steelworkers that day. People were upset about the jobs being transitioned. And when we think about workforce development, job training grants, we're thinking about how do we create these pathways so we're able to, maybe not tomorrow, but over time, transition people into new industries so they don't lose their place in society. One of the grants that we did, I spoke a little earlier about, is youth builds. We're also thinking about young people. And in the youth build grant, I want to say it was $24 million, if I'm mistaken. My office will correct it later on. That went to youth build. Historically, youth build has been a program of training folks in carpentry and woodworking and things like that. And we have a component of that with clean energy and creating a pathway. So we have to really think about our grant-making process and getting more ability to be able to do that. When it comes to iLab, we're in lots of different spaces. I've asked for an increase in this budget, both to keep an eye on the trade agreements that we have around the globe, making sure we have worker protections around the globe. And I've spent a lot, in the last couple of months, the last year or so, I've been to Cabo Verde, I've been to Germany, I've been to South Korea, and also Deputy Secretary Sue has been to Mexico, working with the international community on labor standards, labor's rights, and also creating pathways.
There's terrific opportunities, and this is all while we keep to our goals of reducing carbon reductions. As somebody who was very involved, at that time was now Senator Padilla, on the California Renewable Portfolio Standards, we can make those goals, I think, and pass them, and at the same time provide a new economy with good paying jobs. On two separate subjects, first of all, telehealth, and telework, I should say, but related. Chairman DeFazio is a member of the T&I committee. We've talked a lot about this, that the opportunity coming out in places like Boston and San Francisco and others to help people be able to improve their quality of life so they don't spend hours getting to and from work, but protect their labor rights, and at the same time ensure that the employer is getting good productivity. Could you talk about where the Labor Department might be helpful in that regard?
Yeah, I also think telehealth, we learned a lot in the last couple of years with the pandemic. We talked about childcare, we talked about workforce development, we talked about people leaving their job. Telehealth is one of those areas it was in some cases a bright spot where people have been able to use the telehealth, whether it's a COVID diagnosis and not having to bring people into hospitals that had emergency numbers in the hospital. Also, I've spoken to employers around the country that are using telehealth in response to the mental health crisis and doing mental health counseling. And so we're certainly working, our EPSA department is working, looking at telehealth, and want to make sure we're expanding benefits in those spaces. And with the mental health parity law, I know it's jumping back a little bit, with the mental health parity law, we need to increase our counseling services in the United States of America and our coverage service in America for American workers that want to get health care.
And Mr. Chairman, we just happened to have a conversation this morning, Mr. Allen and I, about things that we could work on together to help with telehealth, but also telework. So look forward to the continued conversation. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Good luck.